We've all met that one person who seems completely unshakable even in a total crisis. They don't raise their voice, they don't cry, and they never seem to lose their cool. On the surface, it looks like they have reached a state of ultimate peaceful zen. But what if I told you that most of what we call calm is actually a ticking time bomb? There is a massive, invisible difference between being mature and being repressed. Most people confuse the silence of suppression with the peace of true maturity. But neuroscience shows that these two states are actually light years apart in the brain. One leads to deep connection and health, while the other leads to a physical breakdown. Stay with me, because understanding this will explain why your patience feels so heavy. It's about to change how you see every emotional reaction you've ever had in your life. We often praise people for holding it together when we should actually be worried. Because the brain doesn't just delete an emotion when you decide not to show it. It just moves the file to a different folder where it starts to corrupt your entire system. This is the emotional maturity versus suppression gap that almost everyone misses. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which side of the line you are currently on. You'll learn why your strength might actually be your greatest hidden weakness. And more importantly, how to stop being a calm prisoner of your own rigid mind. This isn't just about feeling better. It's about surviving the weight of your own soul. Let's dive into the fascinating and sometimes scary psychology of our inner walls. First, let's define the mechanism that is currently draining your emotional battery. Emotional suppression is what psychologists call a downregulation strategy of the mind. It happens when you consciously or unconsciously push a feeling away to stay functional. Think of it like trying to hold an inflated beach ball under the water with your bare hands. It takes constant, grueling effort, and the moment you let go, it explodes to the surface. When you suppress, you are telling your nervous system that your feelings are a threat. Your brain's amygdala screams that there is a fire, but you refuse to let the alarm ring. This creates a state of high internal friction that most people mistake for discipline. But here is the kicker. Suppression doesn't actually reduce the intensity of the feeling. Studies using fMRI scans show that while the face stays still, the brain stays on fire. Your heart rate remains elevated, and your stress hormones continue to flood your blood. You are essentially redlining your engine while the car is still sitting in park. It is an exhausting way to live, yet society rewards us for this poker face behavior. We call it being professional or stoic, but our biology calls it chronic stress. And because we aren't processing the emotion, we never actually learn from what it's saying. We become disconnected from our own internal compass, leading to a sense of numbness. If you've ever felt fine but totally empty inside, this is likely the reason why. But wait, it gets even more interesting when we look at the alternative approach. Because true emotional maturity looks nothing like this high-pressure internal standoff. It requires a completely different relationship with the messy parts of being human. Let's look at why maturity is actually the quieter and much more radical choice. Emotional maturity is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of awareness. It is the ability to sit with a difficult emotion without being consumed or terrified by it. A mature person feels the anger, the grief, or the shame just as intensely as anyone else. But instead of pushing the ball under the water, they let it float beside them. They have what psychologists call high affective granularity, or the ability to name it. Instead of saying, "I'm stressed," they say, "I am feeling unheard and a bit lonely." This simple act of naming the emotion changes how the brain processes the information. It moves the activity from the reactive amygdala to the logical prefrontal cortex. This is where true regulation happens, rather than the suffocation of suppression. Maturity allows you to have a feeling without becoming the feeling in that moment. It creates a space between the stimulus and your response, where your freedom lives. In that space, you can choose how to act, rather than reacting out of old, dusty habits. A mature person can say, "I am very angry right now," with a completely calm voice. They aren't hiding the anger. They are simply managing the expression of that energy. They don't need to explode to be heard, and they don't need to hide to be safe. This is a level of psychological sovereignty that most people never actually reach. It allows you to be consistent in your self-concept, regardless of the external chaos. But why is this so hard for us to do, and why do we default to the easier hiding? The answer lies in our tribal history and our deep-seated fear of being too much. Stay with me because this next part explains the social trap we all fall into. For thousands of years, being difficult meant being kicked out of the tribe. And in the wild, being alone meant you were almost certainly going to be eaten. Our brains are hardwired to associate emotional outbursts with social exclusion. So, we learn to suppress our darker feelings to ensure our collective survival. We became experts at masking, presenting a version of ourselves that is easy to like. We tell ourselves we are being considerate by not sharing our true heavy burdens. But this tribal instinct is actually backfiring in our modern, hyperconnected world. When you suppress your emotions to fit in, you are actually preventing real connection. Because intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires being seen. If you only show the calm mask, people are connecting with the mask, not with you. This leads to a profound sense of social loneliness. Even when you are never alone, you feel like a fraud because you know that if they saw the real you, they'd leave. Or at least, that is the lie that your fear-based suppression is telling you every day. Emotional maturity realizes that the tribe that requires your silence is not yours. A mature person allocates their empathy toward people who can handle their truth. They stop trying to be low maintenance and start trying to be high integrity. This shift is terrifying because it risks the US versus them rejection we all fear. But it is the only way to find a group where you can finally stop holding your breath. The cost of suppression is your health. The cost of maturity is merely your mask. But the physical toll of staying masked is far higher than most of us realize. Your body is the scoreboard for every emotion you have ever tried to bury alive. When you suppress a feeling, the energy of that emotion has to go somewhere. In somatic psychology, we call this body armoring, the physical tension of hiding. It manifests as chronic neck pain, a tight jaw, or digestive issues that won't go away. Your nervous system is stuck in a functional freeze state, always on high alert. You are burning through your empathy budget, just trying to keep your face still. This leads to decision fatigue and a general sense of being burnt out by nothing. Research shows that chronic suppression is linked to a weakened immune system. You literally become more susceptible to getting sick because you are sad. It is the physical manifestation of an internal war that has no clear winner. Emotional maturity, on the other hand, allows the stress cycle to actually finish. When you acknowledge a feeling, you allow the cortisol to peak and then drop. You let the shiver happen, the tear fall, or the breath finally escape. This release tells your body that the threat has passed and it is safe to rest now. Suppression keeps you in the middle of the fire. Maturity lets the fire burn out. If you find yourself constantly exhausted for no reason, look at your emotions. Are you carrying 20 years of fine in your shoulders and your lower back? Your body is screaming for the maturity to finally let those feelings be real. But how do we bridge the gap between these two very different ways of existing? It starts with a radical, simple shift in how you view the bad things you feel. Most of us were raised to believe that some emotions are good and some are bad. Happiness is good, while anger, sadness, and jealousy are toxic or wrong. This binary thinking is the primary driver of emotional suppression in our society. If you feel a bad emotion, you feel like a bad person for having it at all. So you hide it to maintain your good status in the eyes of yourself and others. But emotional maturity understands that emotions are simply data, not directions. Anger is data that a boundary has been crossed. Sadness is data that you lost value. Jealousy is simply data about what your heart truly desires but doesn't have yet. When you stop judging the data, you stop needing to suppress the messenger. You can look at your anger with curiosity rather than with fear or immediate shame. A mature person treats their emotions like whether it's not good or bad. It's just raining today and that's okay. The rain doesn't mean the sky is broken. Suppression is like trying to yell at the clouds to stop dropping water on you. Maturity is simply putting on an umbrella and waiting for the storm to pass. This shift in perspective removes the secondary emotion of shame from the mix. You aren't angry at yourself for being sad anymore. You are just sad. This reduces the total emotional load on your system by at least 50%. It allows you to process the primary feeling much faster and with much more grace. But to do this, you have to be willing to experience the scary part of being open. You have to move from parasocial self-observation to direct self-engagement. A non-self-aware person has a parasocial relationship with their own inner life. They watch their feelings from a distance, like they are watching a movie character. They say things like, "I guess I'm just stressed," without actually feeling the stress. They are intellectualizing their emotions to keep them at a safe, sterile distance. Emotional maturity requires direct engagement. It means being in the feeling. It means letting the discomfort of the knot in your stomach be real for a minute. This is terrifying because we fear that if we feel it, we will be stuck in it forever. But the irony of psychology is that what you resist persists in your system. The more you look away from the feeling, the more it has to scream to be heard. Maturity is the act of turning toward the scream and asking, "What do you need?" Often, the feeling just needs to be witnessed by your own conscious mind. It doesn't even necessarily need a solution or a fix in that exact moment. Once a feeling is heard, its job is done, and it begins to dissolve naturally. Suppression is a one-sided conversation where you are constantly shushing yourself. Maturity is a reciprocal relationship between your thinking self and feeling self. This creates a sense of internal trust that is the foundation of all confidence. You know that you won't abandon yourself when things get emotionally difficult. You are your own safe harbor, which makes the world feel much less dangerous. There is a specific, magical trick in psychology called affect labeling. Research from UCLA shows that putting feelings into words reduces amygdala activity. When you say, "I feel invisible," the alarm in your brain literally quiets down. But suppression prevents this magic from happening because you refuse to speak. You stay in the preverbal state of panic, where the body feels but the mind hides. Emotional maturity is the practice of expanding your emotional vocabulary. It is moving from "I'm okay" to "I feel slightly apprehensive but also hopeful." This precision allows you to allocate your energy to the right places. If you know you are overwhelmed, you know you need to rest, not try harder. If you know you are resentful, you know you need a boundary, not a vacation. Suppression is blunt force trauma. It shuts down everything, the good and the bad. Maturity is precision surgery. It deals with the specific issue without collateral. When you suppress the bad feelings, you accidentally suppress the good ones too. You cannot selectively numb your heart. It is an all-or-nothing emotional system. This is why repressed people often feel flat or bored with their own lives. They have traded their highs just to avoid the possibility of their lows. Maturity realizes that the lows are the price of admission for the highs. It is the dopamine loop of real life, unpredictable, but deeply, truly meaningful. By naming the feeling, you reclaim the power to move through it toward the joy. Let's look at how this changes your social IQ and your ability to lead others. People who suppress their emotions are often perceived as cold or untrustworthy. This is because our brains pick up on the incongruence between the face and the vibe. Your mirror neurons tell you that something is off with the person in front of you. You can't quite relax around them because you don't know what they are really thinking. Emotional maturity creates congruence. What is on the inside matches the outside. This makes you readable, and in the world of psychology, readable means safe. Safe people are the ones who get promoted, the ones who lead, and the ones who love. They don't have hidden agendas because their agenda is written on their face. They have a high interpersonal reciprocity because they are direct participants. Suppression creates parasocial walls. Maturity builds relational bridges. A mature person can handle your emotions because they aren't afraid of their own. If you cry, they don't get awkward and try to fix it or make you stop it. They can sit in the fire with you because they know how to sit in their own fire. This makes them empathy alchemists. They turn your pain into shared meaning. Suppression is a defense mechanism. Maturity is a connection mechanism. One keeps you safe but lonely. The other keeps you at risk but deeply loved. It is the difference between existing in a room and living in a community. Your tribal instincts finally find their true home in the hearts of others. You become the person people turn to when the world gets unpredictably loud. But how do you start this transition if you've been a suppressor for years? If you have been a suppressor your whole life, feeling will feel like a failure. You will feel weak the first time you let a tear fall or a boundary be spoken. But remember, feeling is a high-stakes skill that requires constant practice. Start small with what we call the 2-minute check-in every single morning. Ask yourself, if I weren't allowed to say fine, how would I actually feel today? Don't judge the answer. Just witness it like a scientist observing a specimen. If you feel anxious, locate where that anxiety is sitting in your physical body. Is it in your chest, your throat, your stomach? Just look at it and breathe. This is the optimal experience of being an integrated, self-aware human being. You are moving from behavioral addiction to emotional freedom slowly. Don't expect to be perfect at this. Perfection is just another form of suppression. Maturity is messy, It's about being consistently real rather than consistently right. Apologize when you lose your cool, but don't shame yourself for having the cool. You are learning a different game than the 60% of people who are still hiding. This is the quiet advantage that will change your health, your career, and your love. You are finally becoming the protagonist of your own story, not just a spectator. The invisible wall is starting to crumble, one honest, named feeling at a time. You aren't losing control. You are finally gaining the only control that matters. The control of being the person who knows exactly who they are in the dark. Welcome to the other side of the mask. It is much brighter and warmer here. So, what does it all mean for the person who is still holding it all together? It means that you have permission to finally set the heavy beach ball down. You aren't boring or broken because you have big feelings inside of you. You are simply a tribal creature trying to navigate a complex modern world. The next time someone asks, "How are you?" try to be just a little bit more real. You don't have to tell them your life story, but you can stop the automatic fine. Remember, emotional maturity is a practice, not a destination you reach. It is a choice you make every single time your heart starts to beat a little faster. Will you hide in the old safe shadows of suppression and body armoring? Or will you step into the radical presence of being a truly mature adult? The stakes are your long-term health and your capacity for deep joy. If this resonated with you, you're probably going to love our other deep dives. We talk about why quiet people process information differently and why it's an asset, and why deep thinkers often struggle with the small talk of the surface world. Click one of these videos to find out why your indifference is actually a gift, or how to reset your dopamine system for a more meaningful daily life. You are not too much, and you are certainly not alone in this internal work. There is a massive group of us learning to feel right alongside you today. Thank you for being part of this journey toward a clearer mind. Until next time, keep observing, keep naming, and keep being real.